This is Coffee with Kelly, a dynamic podcast that's dedicated to driving positive change in school safety. I'm your host, Ethan Woodman, Product Marketing Specialist for Crisis Go, and I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Kelly Moore, Senior School Safety Specialist for Crisis Go. Our mission is to empower you with essential knowledge, tools, and inspiration required to foster a safer and more secure school environment. We hope this podcast will be the catalyst for transformation in your schools. Join us as we continue to dive into the world of school safety. Alrighty, good morning, Kelly, and good morning, Michael.
Morning, Ethan.
How are we doing?
This could be a really fun one, really interesting. So I will open up the floor for Michael for you to introduce yourself and tell us what you're about and why you're here.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I appreciate you having me. My name is Michael Clark, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called BAM Weather here out of Indianapolis, Indiana. You know, really the reason today for me to be here is to talk really about my passion for safety as it pertains to weather and looking at weather more in a proactive protocol or approach versus being reactive and always using the popular line, well, you know, the weather's wrong half the time, but everybody still listens to them. You know, I'm passionate about getting the right information into the right hands at the right time so that people can make informed decisions. And kind of like anything, I mean, in my opinion, like anything, there's always something better out there. There's always a better solution, a better way to handle something. And I just believe that. And I believe that wholeheartedly as it pertains to how organizations, schools, folks handle weather and how they plan around it. So I'm here to talk about that.
Or they don't do that.
Yeah.
I would say that most of the time that would be the outcome. Yes, and it's somewhat alarming. I mean, it's kind of common.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the weather is always the weather.
It's always going to weather.
You know, it's always there. It's changing, but it's always there. And I guess one of my first questions might be for Kelly is like, how often do you think that the weather is really considered in like a reunification or an alerting process? Like, how often do you think that's actually part of the equation?
This goes back to my overarching canons of emergency response related to people's involvement. And that is, it's not a thing until it's a thing. It's not an emergency. They don't think about it until it happens. And then it becomes an emergency. Then what happens if, how often I say that, and they're in the middle of this emergency and they haven't considered weather, and their only reunification site is at the football field. That's what they considered. Why? Because they look at the worst case scenario, but try to apply the best case solution. And we know about Murphy's Law. First of all, it says if it can go wrong, it will. So that's the rule. And the odds are if you have to do a reunification and your only planned site is the football field, it's going to be on a thunderstorm with lightning, and all of your reunification places, the zones where you partition all the kids so you can find them easy, are going to be the light stanchions that are the lightning rods, right? I mean, that's Murphy's Law.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because when you think about weather and thunderstorms and lightning, I mean, these are things that happen every day. They've been happening since the beginning of time, and they'll happen till the end of time. To me, what's interesting is that it happens somewhere every day, all the time. And there's still this approach to how we're managing weather safety as, well, I'll deal with it when it happens. I'll deal with it when it gets here. And really what's interesting too is you can do this at minimal costs. Like this is not like expensive stuff to stay out ahead of weather and be alerted and prepared. And so it's fascinating to me, the back burner approach on something that's guaranteed to happen at some point in time.
I think we have an article that we want to discuss, But the interesting part is I understand when I plan things, I think about weather, what happens if, right? But the interesting thing about weather is even good weather can become a factor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like nice hot sunny day.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
But we'll get into that. Let's real quick. Let's jump into this article because I think it's germane to the discussion we're having right now.
Sure. Yeah. So this is actually posted by BAM Weather. This is like super interesting. Just how deep you guys get into like how to look out for lightning and you get all these diagrams and stuff. It's like I'm going back to school learn about weather. Anyways, so you guys have highlighted that actually in the last couple or few days, there's been 3 separate incidences of lightning strikes. So there's one in Florida, Marco Island Beach Resort, Florida, New Smyrna, Florida, and South Carolina Beach.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. And what's interesting with a lot of these, well, all of them is we this is what we call the bolt out of the blue, where lightning comes on. You talked about a sunny day. Lightning can strike as far as 30 miles away
Wow.
from its parent thunderstorm. And so you might see the sun and the blue sky and the cloud off in the distance and think that you're fine. And it can strike you. I mean, it kills 54 people a year around the world. And so, it's interesting because in the last couple of days, you've had 25 people in the U.S. get hit by lightning. That's a lot. That's a lot of people.
Like you think about like what are the chances of getting hit by lightning? I think it's
Yeah,
like
I mean, people they say that it's like, man, it's that's the thing is it's like, well, it's just odds are low.
Yeah.
It's like having an active shooter somewhere. What are
exactly.
the odds? They're not very high.
It's low frequency but high risk.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's where we get into it's not a problem until it becomes a problem. And we're not taking proper precautions. I look at the weather every morning and plan my day around that, especially if I'm going out, like today I'm working inside. So the weather is what it is. But I also know that it's going to be 90 degrees and humid. And when you go outside, we have to take some precautions for that. When we talk about emergency planning and response and so forth, the military uses this acronym called WET. That's a consideration that has to be addressed before every plan. And it's the weather, the enemy, the threat, and the terrain. Those 3 things. And when you start talking about emergency, there's no emergency planning and crisis management. There's no difference there. Weather is a huge thing. And you can have the same event and then you throw thunder, lightning, even just torrential rain impacts almost everything within that emergency.
Mm-hmm. Yep. 100%.
So it's crazy to me.
Yeah, and what's interesting too, Kelly, is that there are things that can see and identify that to where you can remove that from the equation. You can remove having to deal with that by a few simple steps. It's really what seems like voodoo rocket science to most people. It's really not. It's really not that difficult to see a threat, time it out, identify what it's going to do, when it's going to get there, when it's going to leave. All of those things can happen to where it's like you don't have to be one of the 25 people in the last couple of days that's been struck by lightning, especially in the setting of a school or an outdoor venue or concert affair, something like that. I mean, there are, despite what people believe, what they think they know, there are preventative measures that can be taken. It can happen. You guys probably remember a couple of weeks ago the tornado that went through St. Louis.
Yep.
We had a 17-minute lead time on that tornado warning going into St. Louis. I mean, 17 minutes is a long time to prepare for something like that. And people were still killed. There were still fatalities, unfortunately. I just think about it. I'm like, man, it's maddening because there's remedies to this stuff.
Welcome to my world.
Yeah, I guess this is one of Kelly's
I had a feeling you would say that.
Kelly's
Yeah,
buttons,
this
as I
is,
would say.
but
Yeah.
we all, every one of us looks at the probability, and like you say, being struck by lightning. What are the chances?
Hmm.
It's right up there with winning the lottery, right?
Yeah.
People say, what are the chances? And if the probability is so low that I'm going to be the one God chooses today, then why not risk it, right? The solution is, if you are aware, you can remove yourself from that potential and increase your probability that it's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
If you have an option to easily remove yourself from the equation, why not do it?
Yeah, it's an age-long question. I don't know. It doesn't make sense. I mean, it's just like the same thing, man. With you could think about life insurance policy. Like, okay, none of us think we're gonna die crazy, but we all throw a policy on ourselves to make sure if we do, people are taken care of. I think about that all the time. I'm like, what are you? So, what's important to you? What are you spending money on? Because a lot of times you can look at people's where their budgets are going. That it's going to tell you what's important to them and what's not, and those are the facts.
Yeah, some of that is marketing.
Mm-hmm.
That's a whole nother discussion with me.
Yeah.
But but that being said, you're absolutely right. And the considerations, and I like I said, I look at the weather every day. The weather in my past career was very important to me because I was managing or helping manage incidences in large scale wildfires, debris flows, those types of incidences. We were acutely aware of the weather. We were fortunate during those incidences to have an assigned, in most cases, depending on the size of the incident, but in most cases, we had an assigned either meteorologist and or team of meteorologists that were given us intel as things are developing and what to expect so that we could make operational decisions.
Yep.
And then it would lead us to make decisions based upon their information that wasn't always correct. I mean, it was, the best that they could do, and we get it, but we had to apply their knowledge to our institutional knowledge of the
Mm-hmm.
incident, the terrain, historical behaviors of the winds and the pressures and so forth. Most of the time, we were able to come into making plans. And oftentimes, because the information was there, but it wasn't always, the point is we had to make contingency plans. We had the information, it was interpreted one way, it was interpreted another way. And I'll tell you why that's important for us in just a second. We had to make plan A, plan B, plan C in case one of us was wrong
Right.
or more than one of
Mm.
us was wrong.
Yep.
And the reason I say we had to do that is because the same information, the same data, the same experts are coming in and giving us the information. But depending on your role within the incident, it means something different, right? As an example, in a fire behavior is directly connected to weather behavior.
Mm-hmm.
So the plan on how to get ahead of that fire is dependent on the weather. That's why we have assigned meteorologists and teams of meteorologists. But that same data means something different to law enforcement who's charged with evacuations,
Mm.
right? So I learned this during one of our large fires in Southern California. And, they said the winds are going to push down this way. And our canyons pushed down this way. And so we had to make arrangements to evacuate. So we had to make a decision. So, but the data was the same. We're looking at it. And now I, as part of the incident command, have to make a decision on who I'm going to force out of their houses. Right? So understand that the data is the same, but we interpret it different based upon our roles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you almost wonder in situations, it's like, how do you get it into the right hands, and the guy that has the ability to make the overall arching call?
Yep.
Because you're right, it does. Everybody is impacted differently. I mean, the bus routes and the bus drivers it's totally different versus the football team.
Mm.
Yep.
So
unless the football team's on the bus.
Right. Right. Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah. But it is getting it to the right person, right? And that's why in school and most large scale incidences, we always hear about incident command, the incident command system. But unless you're really utilizing the incident command system, you don't really understand unified command.
Mm-hmm.
And almost every large scale incident, I don't care whether it's a natural disaster, a man made disaster, what have you, there's a unified command. There's a need to have a unified command because there's different interests. And that's no different with the school. And I would argue that we should be focusing more on unified command and less on the incident command, although you need one to get to the other.
Right.
If we're talking about getting it to the right people, it's that unified command. Those people who are making the decisions and saying this is our objective.
Well, and I'm just curious, like, what is your opinion on, okay, if we have that, but how do we get those in that unified command to understand that they need the data to begin with?
The way that you do that is, and it sounds so much simpler than it actually is. When you do your drills, your tabletops, you do your planning and all of that stuff, it has to be ingrained that one of the first questions they talk about is weather. You have this scenario. Let's just go walk through a scenario. And you have a fire. Every evacuation plan in a school fire is what?
Probably like getting out of the building.
Evacuation.
Somewhere. Going
Evacuation.
somewhere not where the fire is.
We've been doing this for almost 100 years now. We hear the fire alarm. Everyone stands up in an orderly fashion, lines up against the wall. The teacher takes roll real quick or just a quick survey saying everyone's here. And they follow the teacher out like a bunch of little ducklings.
Yep.
Does that change if it's 20 degrees below zero?
No.
They're still going to do that, but should they be? That's the question, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you start looking at that scenario and you say, okay, we're going to evacuate the building, what's the weather like?
Yep. It's a great question. Great way to look at it.
And we might still move them out because we have to, because we're taking them from a high risk to a lower risk. Not a low risk, but a lower risk, right?
Right.
So if that's the case, if we have a 20, even if it's a wind chill, we have a minus 20 degree risk outside, what do we need to do? We need to make sure, even if they don't put it on, they need to take their jackets and their fluffy boots and stuff with them. They need to grab it. Generally, we say, leave your stuff. But we might need to. So in any circumstance, we need to consider weather. And we got to get used to asking that question right at the beginning.
Yeah.
So we have so many pre-planned events that we sit back and we wait and make sure nothing happens. We have a security plan for football games and so forth. But do we actually have a security plan if we haven't determined the potential for a weather event during the football game. That football game, not just a football game, but that football game.
Yep.
So when you are doing your scheduling for all of the home games or the games that you are responsible for, including playoff games and so forth, when you start coming up to a game, you should call your team together and say, what's the weather going to look like? Because there's a couple of things, right? And you don't want to get this to only be considered Friday. You want to start looking at it the week before and saying, what's our potential? Because you might have to call the game. It's so much easier to do if you call it on Wednesday than you call it on Friday at 5:30.
Yeah, it is. And I find though, is I have a tough time, people don't want to do that.
Nope.
It's like, nah, I'd rather just, wait. And it's like, well, gosh,
Yeah.
there are certain instances where we know that regardless of whether you wait or not, what the outcome is going to be.
Yeah. There's also other circumstances that you have very short notice, right?
Yeah.
If you get into that practice where you have a planning cycle, and that planning cycle is likely going to start before even the game that's tomorrow, you're going to start planning for the next game. So you're going to have a couple of these that are rolling down your schedule. And the idea is, if you start planning 2 weeks or a week and a half ahead of your actual event and something happens that is unforeseen, you're much better prepared to respond to it because you have the information beforehand.
Yeah.
And so walking through that and getting that as part of your event planning and response plan, then it becomes.
Would you argue, so let's say, okay, with what you just said, we know that organizations they're doing this with the potential of an active shooter or just a threat to safety in general. We know there's plans in place. We know that there may be security. You can't take a gun in somewhere. There's things that people are doing to prevent these things that could result in loss of life. Someone could get really injured, or there could be a really big problem.
Mm-hmm.
There could be that same outcome as it pertains to weather.
Sure.
The same thing could happen, but anywhere, most places I go, most schools I talk to, it's like, well, the athletic trainer's looking at it.
Yeah.
They'll be able to tell us if something's coming. And it's like, there's really no urgency or sense of, it's really not that big of a deal. And if it happens, we'll deal with it. And I just wonder, like, I don't understand why it's like that.
Ethan, you want to take that one or you want me to take it?
I mean, my first question is, the athletic director, should that be their responsibility, is accounting for weather?
It is. You know why?
It is. Okay.
You know why?
I would have guessed differently.
Yeah, no, it is. And this is why. And the athletic director is responsible for, or the athletic trainer is responsible for that event. Right? So we live, and when I say we, I'm talking about the schools, live in a culture of it's somebody else's responsibility.
Yeah.
And so as a principal, as a school district administrator, we assign responsibilities to people who it may sound or look like that's it, but that's not necessarily the case. But the reason that an athletic director or athletic trainer, not the same people, but I've seen both be assigned this, is because of the mandates. And one of the primary mandates around weather is what?
Gosh, I don't know. I mean,
I could take a guess, but I don't.
Take a guess.
I would assume that you probably can't play a game outside if it reaches a certain threshold of
it's the
temperature.
Heat index.
Yeah, okay.
That's right. Because we've had instances where we've had athletes killed because of overexertion, overheating, heat stroke, and all
Yeah.
of that stuff,
Yeah.
right?
Once you're like playing a game and you're competitive, like you are not thinking about how hot you actually are.
Right. So now
Like
there's
you're like,
mandates.
I'm gonna win this game.
Yep.
I'm gonna beat this kid on the field. Like you're not thinking, it's like 96 degrees out. I should probably like
With 80%
go.
humidity.
I should
Right.
probably go like drink out of my water bottle. It's like, no, I'm gonna go score this goal.
Yeah.
Right. So
I
now
get
that
that.
we've had several, and almost specifically in the football realm, right? Because they're in the pads, they're in the helmets, they're
Oh man, I can't imagine.
right. We've also had them in the soccer realm and those types of things. But because there's a mandate, then they address it. We get back to
That's when they pay attention to
that.
it.
We get back to our schools don't necessarily take anything serious until there's a mandate.
Yep.
Right.
It's a great point.
We have a hard time getting many schools to consider after hour events like sporting events, drama presentations, band presentations, clubs, recreational activities like after school, all of these things. We have a difficult time getting them to consider those as one of their primary responsibilities in school safety anyway. Probably is a whole nother podcast. I think we've actually done something on that. But
yes, we have.
when we get into the actual outdoor sports issues, we consider the mandate. The mandate is the heat and lightning. I think there's a mandate about lightning.
Certain states, certain places need to have some.
Yeah. Most of those states that do experience they have a high incidence of lightning strikes, like in the Southeast. California, Southern California, we don't get a lot of them. We get some, but we don't get a lot of them because we don't have that type of weather. Now that I'm in Virginia, we see those things all the time, right? That being said, that's not your emergency. I mean, it might become your emergency. If you're planning for an event, you have to consider all of those emergencies or all of those risks. When we plan a school safety program, obviously in the media and in the public eye, we talk an awful lot about active shooter. Mm-hmm. Probably one of the least likely events any of us will ever experience. But we plan for it.
Yep.
If this happens, this is going to be a thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what we really have to do, and there's a mandate for this, is an all hazards approach. Mm-hmm. What risk are you likely to face?
Yeah.
And now you have to take that and apply that to our events every day at school, our after school programs, our before school programs, our athletic events, the popular ones as well as the unpopular ones. You could take that for what it's worth, right? Football is very, very popular. So there's a lot of focus on securing football games because you have a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I don't mean this to be sexist or any ill will towards anything. Girl softball, not so much.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. Facts are facts.
Track and field, not so much. Even though you have a large population participating in it, you're not getting thousands of people to show up.
Yeah, and what's interesting is you could make the case that weather is probably going to impact everyone in this space at least a dozen times a year. It's not, that may be low.
Yep.
And so the active shooter scenario is likely never, hopefully never, but weather is inevitable. It doesn't matter if you want it to or not, or if you plan or you don't plan, it's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Like
you're going to be impacted by it.
Up in New Hampshire, I mean, it's like anywhere from, I think we had a crazy snowstorm on Halloween.
Yeah.
I think we had like 3 feet of snow or something ridiculous like that. So like anywhere from that point until March-ish, you should have some account of like okay, like it could at any point you could have, up to 3, 4 some feet of snow, like, and be able to account for that, account for, I mean, it's incredible that people forget how to drive suddenly in the winter here. I don't, it's, they experience it every year, but yet they forget that, hey, when it's snow and raining and it rains and it gets to like 30 below, the road's going to be ice and it's going to
Yep.
be really slippery. And it doesn't matter if you got a big truck or a Jeep,
No,
you're
no.
going off the road.
Yeah, but it goes to show you that some of these survival skills and emergency skills are perishable,
Yep.
and
Yeah,
you got to keep practice at it. And some of it is attitude.
mm, that's true.
I live in New Hampshire. We get
Yeah,
this all the time. It ain't no big deal,
I can do it.
but you can't
I
overcome physics.
can.
Mhm.
Yeah. You always get these like huge trucks going by, and like I have a truck too, so I guess but you always get these big trucks that like blow right by you going way too fast, and then you
Yeah.
see them fishtail and like
It's everywhere.
yeah.
It really is. So my question would be, as we just talk about this, what do we do? What do people do? Like, how do we get folks to consider that whether dealing with it is inevitable, and there are ways to make that much easier on them to manage these events? How do we encourage people to do that?
Here we are,
Yeah,
right?
Mhm.
education.
Education is the
You got to
way.
keep talking about it and
Yep.
add it into every
Conversation that
drill
you have.
every drill
Yep.
that you have. Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
It's just like
So
it needs to be like one of those boxes. Like same thing with communication. Like, what's your communication like? Okay, what's the weather like? It's like I feel like there needs to be like these certain criteria. Like you always have to account for this. No matter what. It's
it's
always
part
going to
of
be
your
a thing.
checklist. It's got to be until people think about it all of the time. We always say, and we're still talking about this. We shouldn't rely on checklists to respond to an emergency, right?
Mm.
Checklists are meant or should be used to guide your training, and you should be able to respond to an incident without looking at a checklist. Why? Because you're not going to have time to run to the wall, grab it off the wall, flip to the category,
What
bomb
emergency
threat,
am I in
whatever.
again?
You're not going to have that time to do that. So you need to train to do it without that. Now, checklists are good for when in an emergency you have done everything that you can think of, but we know how that process goes during an emergency. You stop thinking about some things that are obvious. They should be used to review during the emergency to see if you have forgotten anything or see if there is
Mhm.
something that you need to do, right? So,
Yeah.
weather should be part of your checklist. It should be part of your safety culture.
Hmm. Yeah.
But as frustrating as it is, we have to create that culture. And the way that we do that is we infuse safety and therefore weather into everything that we're discussing. And Ethan has heard me say this before. And when I say everything, I mean everything. I mean cooking the kids' meals in the morning. I mean, when you're picking out curriculum, how does that impact our safety?
Hmm.
And people say, what do you mean? We're trying to get a new reading curriculum for kids. And they said, how does that impact our safety? I don't know. Let's talk about it. Because I can certainly come back and say, politics is saying that some of the curriculum is causing issues at your school board meetings and at your schools and for your district. What caused those issues? The curriculum. What are the impacts? I don't know. I don't know whether it's right or wrong. I don't care about it. I really don't.
Yep.
But I do care about the impacts that your choices, your decisions as a school district are making that cause safety issues. And some are safety issues that won't be realized for many years.
Yep.
Let's do that. And being the weather, when we talk about that WET acronym, weather, enemy, terrain. Terrain is environment, right? So what is the weather? What's the enemy? Enemy can be curriculum. It can be how we're feeding our kids or not feeding our kids, right? The environment can be weather, like outdoors, indoors, but it can also be political environment. It could be all kinds of different things. So let's start bringing this into being part of the first question. We look at the data, and this goes back to the interpretation of the data, is it's very difficult for me as a non-weather person. I am a non-weather person, but I have been exposed to many different, so I have a little bit better understanding than a lot of the non-weather people. So I'm on the higher end of non-weather people. And when I say weather people, I mean scientists that understand what those arrows mean and stuff.
Uh-huh.
What does it mean to me? Asking that question, how do I look at it? And how do I get that information? When I travel, so I'm traveling in a week and a half, I'm already looking at the weather for my airport, my connecting airport, and my destination.
Yeah, I don't look at the connecting one.
I do, because I just spent 3 hours in an airport because of my connector,
horrible.
right? It impacts me. But it's difficult to look at that and interpret that because the information being generated isn't meant for Kelly.
Mm-hmm.
So I would ask Michael, why is that important?
And I think it's important because it's at some point in time, it's going to you're going to threaten the safety of transportation. You're going to threaten the safety of spectators. You're going to have to cancel an event, delay school, close school. It all of these types of outcomes, I think, they're inevitable. It's not that it's not going to happen. It's that they will happen, and you'll need to be ready to deal with it. And it's easy to position yourself to be ready to deal with it. It's not that it's difficult. It's very simple.
How do I get that information that's specific to me?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, what I would say is contact us. We certainly would love to help you with that, but it's our platform, our product called Clarity. It's an application or a desktop version of this in a software program to where you're going to get this information sent to you every day without asking for it. In fact, you don't need to ask. We send it if we think you need to know it, we send it. So you're getting it even if you're not asking for it, which helps a lot of times eliminate blind spots and being caught off guard and folks wondering, where the heck did that come from?
Right.
And then when it does happen, when it is sent to you, you can talk directly to a meteorologist from your phone or from your computer at any time. What it's doing is just it's eliminating guesswork. It's eliminating the unknown when it pertains to weather, which you can easily do, and that is what we do for these organizations. Is we just act as the expert in that particular field, so that nobody there has to pretend like they're an expert because they're not. I mean, it would be like me trying to plan a football game at a high school. I have no idea what I've never done it. I mean, I could pretend like I know how to do it, but I don't know how to coordinate the teams and set up the concessions and take ticket sales. And I don't know because it's not my job. And so my big thing is like, man, let's let everyone do their jobs that they're professionals at and really just enhance the ability to plan around and keep people safe with weather. And that would be through us.
Yeah. Here's one of the things that the schools claim they're good at. I would challenge them on this statement is they are data driven. They want data. They always want data. The problem is they want all of the data, and they don't necessarily know how to interpret it. But when we are looking at, and I know you're well of left of bang in that whole theory and concept, as we're looking and we're starting to identify potential threats, left of bang says that it's easy for people who have a yes or a clear yes or a clear no response to a situation. If it's clearly yes, I need to do this, or clearly no, I don't need to do it, or I shouldn't do this, or what have you, that is easy. It's the gray area that is the area between that becomes difficult.
Yeah.
And so when we start looking at weather events and we see that there are things marching towards us 2 weeks in advance, week and a half in advance, and we start to see these things develop, then we can start identifying potential threats.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where information, like as an example, when I start looking out ahead of time for my travel in a week and a half, I'm looking to see what I'm going to wear.
Mm-hmm.
I look to see if I'm going to even be able to make it. So
Yeah.
at certain points, I'm going to start saying, you know what? I need to bring a rain jacket.
Yeah.
I need to do this. I need, and because I'm getting closer, oh, I'm likely not going to, this is going to have, my connector is going to have a tornado warning. So I might want to reroute around from my connector site to another hub that I can get to my destination, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or my destination has just a ton of thunderstorms right now. So
Mm-hmm.
pack a lunch. I might be waiting at my connector, right? Because I can't get in
Yep.
there. Those types of
Yep.
things. But the schools have to do the same thing. The schools have to watch this weather system, whether it's just temperature or tornadoes or what have you, your area. Most of us know what are, like you said, Ethan, at any given time between October and March or April, you're likely to get 3 feet of snow at any given time. So
Yeah.
you can say, okay, it's not time to put up the snowblower, right? But as you're
Yeah.
watching weather, then you can say, oh, maybe I should move it from the back of the garage to the front of the garage,
Mm.
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
And you might want to test it,
Yeah.
to pull it one time and see if it starts,
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
see if there's
Yep.
gas in it, right? It's those types of things that we can and should be doing much better. But it's having the data that means something to you. And I think that's, and Michael, I think you said it perfectly. You have to ask the question. You're the one that is responsible for the safety of your school and all who attend it, all who visit it as a safety director. We can set parameters to say, hey, notify me at this level.
Mm-hmm.
If the heat index reaches 95 degrees, we can set that and say, hey, notify us of that. Michael and BAM weather, they don't need to know why you need that. You need to know why you need that.
Mm-hmm.
And they can say, look, you've met your threshold and it's likely to go well beyond your threshold.
Now the ball's in your court. You have this information.
Well, Michael asked earlier, how do I get that information to the right people? And Michael gets that information to the right people when during their process, their implementation process, they ask, who's the right person,
Mm.
right?
Yep.
How do I get this information? And under these circumstances, who needs this information? Is it the athletic director? Is it the safety director? Maybe it's both. Maybe it's a principal. I don't know. But those are questions that during that implementation process, I would say, how do I get this? What if you don't ask ask the question, but I see a dangerous set of circumstances and a set of data that is trending into the zone. This is coming. How do I get that? Who do I get that to? And what does that mean? And
Yep.
when you start looking at that type of process, then people can make a decision based upon that partnership between the two and understanding you don't always have to monitor the weather systems. We have people that'll do that for you.
Yep.
But ultimately, you're still responsible. So you need to ask that question. Even if you're doing a drill, we're going to do a fire drill. What's the weather like? And I will guarantee you this, knowing my esteemed colleagues and peers in the school districts, if the weather is bad, they will cancel the drill.
No. I knew you were going to say that.
Right? You don't think they will?
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me, but yeah.
And I would argue that is the best time to do it.
Yeah, it's
Figure out what you need to do and how long that's going to take you to put all the little raincoats and rubber boots on your little 6-year-olds that have to run out into the rain during a fire.
Yep.
It's like if you could do something right in the worst conditions, imagine how much better you can do it in better conditions.
Mm-hmm.
Ethan Allen Woodman.
Almost.
Anthony.
Nope.
Andrew.
There you go.
Andrew.
There you go. You got it. Third time's a charm.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Uh-huh.
Gold star for me.
Gold star for Ethan today. Is if you can do it right in the worst conditions, that is the essence of what we are trying to do in an emergency, in a drill, in an exercise. Make the scenarios as tough as they can so that because there's going to be no tougher time than when you have the pressure put on you. And we can't really simulate that pressure of making good decisions, of working through things that we can't really recreate that feeling of that pressure in a drill or an exercise. We can get close, but we can't do it. And we know that in many of our school environments, they try to make it as easy as possible, but that's not what we should be doing. I'll give you just a one-liner from one of my athletic trainers when I was at the FBI Academy. The reason people don't exercise the way that they should is because they're trying to make things easier. But if you were really trying to make yourself better, you would be trying to make your exercise program harder.
Mm-hmm. Love that. Very true.
You would really be trying to make things harder. Why? Because when you have to rely on your physical fitness and your health, if you try to make it as hard as possible for you, then it will be easy when you have to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man, this is this has been a great conversation, and I think it's your perspective on it it's exactly the perspective that I feel like people need to take. And I've been talking to schools and servicing them for 10 years now, and it's really spot on. I mean, I think it's just we need to get people accustomed to treating this the same as they would any other situation that could impact their safety. And it's easy and inexpensive to do. It's one of those things where it's like, gosh, it makes sense. I should be doing that. So thank you for having me on and chatting with me and conversating. It's much appreciated. And if anybody wants to learn anything, feel free to reach out to us. You can just go to our website, bamwx.com, and chat with us. We'd love to chat with you.
Love to chat. We love to chat. I will say this. The only tornado that I have ever experienced was where, Ethan?
I don't know.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
Yeah.
You were there
Oh, was this at
in Indianapolis
Indianapolis?
Oh, wow.
That's
Okay.
right. It was like a
Nazareth.
small minor one, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was there.
I
But it
was
was
there.
so
Yeah.
interesting because like we were at this safety convention, and all of a sudden, like all of the lights in the convention hall like all turn off, and then we start hearing all these sirens, and like everyone has to exit out of the rooms, and it was just kind of like it wasn't complete chaos, but it was kind of chaotic. Like no one really knew where to go, and like it was kind of disorganized, and like we're like, man, if only there was a way that like people could get some notification on their phone of like where to go and what they should be doing.
There is a way.
There is a way.
There is a way.
The best part was the evacuation was into essentially a basement, right?
Yeah, that
We
was
had
creepy.
several
Half
hundred.
the doors didn't work. You go down a stairwell and you're like, oh shoot, I'm going the wrong way, and then you
Right.
turn back and the door's like locked.
Locked. Yeah.
And you get this
Yeah.
like sense of like claustrophobia, and I'm like, okay, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
That was a
it
fun
was
time.
it was fun, but it was a good little exercise
Yeah.
for
I
us.
got to see Kelly in action
There you go.
firsthand. That was pretty good.
Did I panic?
No, I think you were pretty much laughing the entire time. So
It was,
as I was probably too, but
it was a good little exercise.
yeah, Kelly was
What was
having
that,
fun
2
with
years
it.
ago?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, and in fact, my
Yeah.
destination in a week and a half is not the same destination, but it's for the same conference.
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah,
Going to Texas this time.
where I just spent 3 hours due to weather because of lightning strikes. We had to sit on the plane because the ramp crew isn't allowed to go outside with the amount of metal that's around
Mhm.
when there's
Yep.
lightning strikes within
figure.
a certain distance from. So we sat there.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And if you have any questions about what we discussed, leave a comment on our website at crisisgo.com. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you next time on Coffee with Kelly, a discussion on school safety.